Good morning, everyone. Today, we're going to discuss one of the most diverse and valuable ecosystems on our planet, coral reefs. When you hear the word coral, you might imagine colorful underwater landscapes filled with tropical fish. But coral reefs are much more than beautiful places to explore. They support thousands of marine species, protect coastline from waves and storms, and provide important resources for millions of people around the world. So, why do coral reefs matter? And what happens when they disappear? Let's take a closer look. First, let's talk about what coral reefs actually are. Corals may look like plants or rocks, but they are actually animals. Individual corals are made up of tiny organisms called polyps. These small animals live together in large colonies. Over time, their hard skeletons accumulate and form the structures we know as coral reefs. Corals also have a fascinating relationship with microscopic organisms called algae. These algae live inside coral tissues and use sunlight to produce energy through photosynthesis. In return, the algae provide much of the energy that corals need to survive. This relationship is one reason why coral reefs are able to support such productive ecosystems. One of the most important functions of coral reefs is providing habitat for marine organisms. Although coral reefs cover only a small portion of the ocean floor, they support an enormous variety of species. Fish, crabs, sea turtles, mollusks, and many other organisms depend on coral reef ecosystems for food, shelter, and places to reproduce. In this sense, a coral reef is similar to a city. There are many different organisms living close together, each playing a different role in the ecosystem. Some species feed on algae, others eat smaller animals, some clean the reef, while others help spread nutrients. Because these organisms depend on one another, changes to one part of the ecosystem can affect many others. Bihar ni. Yeah. Coral reefs are also important because they protect coastal communities. When large waves travel toward a shoreline, a healthy coral reef can absorb and reduce some of their energy. This helps decrease coastal erosion and can reduce the impact of storms. For people living on tropical islands or along coastal regions, this natural protection can be extremely valuable. In other words, coral reefs provide a service that would otherwise require expensive human-made structures. They act as a kind of natural barrier between the ocean and the land. Coral reefs are important not only for marine life, but also for people. Millions of people depend directly or indirectly on healthy coral reef ecosystems. For example, local communities may rely on reef fish for food and income. Tourism is another important source of economic activity. People travel from around the world to visit tropical beaches, go diving, and experience coral reef environments. As a result, healthy coral reefs can contribute significantly to local economies. This means that protecting coral reefs is not simply an environmental issue. It can also be an economic and social issue. Unfortunately, coral reefs around the world are facing serious threats. One of the most important is coral bleaching. Corals are sensitive to changes in ocean temperature. When the water becomes unusually warm, corals can become stressed and expel the microscopic algae living inside their tissues. As a result, the corals lose much of their color and appear white. This process is called coral bleaching. Bleached corals are not necessarily dead. If environmental conditions return to normal, some corals can recover. However, Prolonged or repeated bleaching can weaken corals and eventually cause them to die. Ecuador. So, what can we do to protect coral reefs? There is no single solution. Reducing greenhouse gas emissions can help limit increases in ocean temperature. Reducing pollution and protecting marine habitats can also improve the health of reef ecosystems. Scientists are also studying ways to help corals become more resilient to environmental changes. For example, researchers are investigating coral species and populations that appear to tolerate warmer conditions better than others. The goal is not simply to protect individual corals, it is to preserve the complex ecosystems that depend on them. To summarize, coral reefs are much more than beautiful underwater landscapes. They provide habitats for marine species, protect coastlines, and support communities around the world. At the same time, they are vulnerable to rising ocean temperatures and other environmental pressures. Understanding coral reefs helps us understand the complex connections between marine ecosystems, climate, and human society. So, the next time you see a photograph of a colorful coral reef, remember that you are looking at one of the most complex ecosystems on Earth. Protecting these ecosystems means protecting not only marine life, but also the people and communities that depend on healthy oceans. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in our next lecture.